All right, what's up, everyone? It's Zach, and today I'm here with a special guest, PJ Nowak. PJ, how are you doing today?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited
Yeah,
to
of
be here.
course. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to stop by. PJ is a former Division One college athlete and graduate from Michigan State University, and is currently the CEO and co-founder for The Donut, which is a daily newsletter that provides, I would say, pretty fact-based, unbiased news Monday through Friday. So that's a little bit about PJ, but do you mind kind of talking a bit about your background, who you are, what you're up to these days?
Yeah, of course. I'll just start with what's going on right now. So as you mentioned, the CEO and founder of a company called The Donut. So we send out currently a daily email newsletter to tens of thousands of people. Just delivers the news of the day in a straightforward manner, super quick, typically less than 4 minutes to read. But the cool part about what we do, on top of just the impartiality and the straightforwardness, is an angle of positivity. And so if you all read news or if you get exposed to news via social media or wherever, typically it's pretty negative, right? It's all the bad stuff
Mhm.
happening in the world. I used to read the news and I just walk away with this impending sense of doom, right? It's like, man, we are so screwed. Like the world's going to end.
Yep.
But in reality, like you take a step back and you look holistically at the world, it's like disease continuously is becoming eradicated. Like less people each year are dying from diseases. More people each year are being lifted out of poverty, like above the poverty line. Like as of November 2019, and this could have changed with the pandemic, so there's not updated numbers on this, but as of November 2019, over half of the world was living above the poverty line for whatever area that they were living in. So that type of stuff, this type of information doesn't get disseminated, in my opinion, widely enough, because a lot of the economic incentives of the media is sensationalism, play into tribalism, things like that. Like, let's get people fighting against themselves because our economic incentive is to generate attention. So, what I
Right.
wanted to do is I wanted to unravel a lot of the news industry's economic incentives and build a company that was the direct antithesis to everything I hated about the news.
I love that. That's such a good point, and I love the positivity that you provide with the donut because, I've talked about this with a bunch of other people on the podcast about like how important it is to surround yourself with positive sources and positivity, whether it's like just people you follow on social media, your actual circle in life, but even like the news. And something that I've talked to people about is like, like I don't, advocate to live under a rock by any means, but like if you just like flip the news on TV, there's so much negativity. And it's like you just need to get away from that. Like that you just walk away feeling that doom cloud. So I love that with the donut, that it is that positive spin, and you can read it and see the good going on in the world because there's so much good happening every day.
Yeah. And let's be totally honest too, man. Like the stuff that happens every day that actually impacts your daily life, like
Hmm.
how much stuff happens every day that actually impacts your daily life. Right? It's like almost none, right? There's really
Right.
not that much real news out there. But
Right.
again, that economic incentive is traffic, it's attention. And the more attention, the more eyeballs you generate, the more revenue you generate. And so on just delivering, like in the old days, an hour-long news broadcast once a day, that was enough, man. Like you got your fill of the news, you feel like you understood what was going on, and then you move on with your day. But now it's like 24/7, 24-hour news cycle. It's got
Right.
to be filled somehow. And
Right.
I see it firsthand, man. Like when our team goes through all of the news, like you get um, drawn in, you get sucked in by a headline, and then you read it and you go, "This is freaking stupid, man." It's like, well,
Yeah.
I think about it too. Running a news organization, it's like somebody had to think of that topic. Somebody had to approve the topic. Somebody had to go research the topic. Somebody had to go write about the topic. Somebody had to go right. Like it's not like this is just a throwaway kind of thing. This is something that is involved, and it's involved typically by more than one person if there's good journalistic standards. If there's not, well, then that's another conversation altogether.
Right.
Just crazy, man. And you can draw a direct line too from the downfall of the news industry, which is about the time when the internet came around,
Hmm.
to a lot of the social division that exists in the country too.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, with that kind of social division, like we mentioned, with the donut, it's unbiased, just very factual. So why was that like an approach that you wanted to take, or what led you to want to be that with the donut?
Man, that's a good question. So, kind of the whole inspiration for the donut came for me just being a newsophile my whole life. It's like when I was young, as being connected,
Yeah.
we've known each other like a decade, 15 years plus now.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah. So as you know, we moved around a lot when Kyle and I were kids, and with that, I really followed a lot of what my dad was doing. My dad was my role model. And every single morning, without fail, he would sit down at the kitchen table and he would read the paper. This would be super early in the morning too. So like I would start getting up 2 hours early for school to just sit at the kitchen table and read the paper with him. And I remember it was this big ordeal because we used to have a yellow lab, well, first a black lab and then a yellow lab, and now a chocolate lab. Our family likes labs.
Yeah.
Um, but my dad would train the labs to go get the paper in the morning. So it was this whole kind of thing where the dog would be so excited, like, because he knew exactly what was going on, and he would get rewarded and praised to the high heaven when he would just bolt out the door. Right, we'd open the door, he'd bolt out of it, sprint to the bottom of the driveway. It was this long straight drive, grab the paper in his mouth, like sprint back, tail wagging the whole way. And man, then I started off with like comics, just reading the comics because I'm like 5 years old at the time. What the hell do I know? And I graduated into sports and then, business and then the actual news and world affairs. So I got to witness firsthand the print newspaper transition to digital and kind of what I like to call the decline of quality news. It is making a comeback now, hopefully, but there was a decline of the news. And what really inspired me to start the donut was seeing this and then seeing kind of like the social tension just start to boil over and impact the lives of people who didn't really care about politics or world affairs. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
these are people who are more, like I just want to hang out with my friends, let me watch sports, do all of that stuff. And what was the tipping point for me was in I think it was fall 2016, and it was the Brett Kavanaugh trial. And
Hmm.
this isn't a commentary on the trial, right, at all. But this is a commentary on before it even happened, or before the hearings. I guess might not be the right word, but before that happened, before seeing any evidence, before seeing any information, people had already made up their mind about which side they were on, and they were
Hmm.
dug in, man, like dug in. And there was no actual discussion happening between people. And that's when I kind of realized, like, man, I really don't like where this is going. And on a personal level, you know, I couldn't find news that I felt like I trusted very quickly. Because I'm somebody who's like trust but verify
Yeah.
every single morning. And I still see it with a lot of our competitors, man. There's just like tiny little things that make me go, man, can I trust you? And it's not even major stuff. It's like getting a number wrong, or like a digit wrong, or spelling a name wrong, or having like the E and the I just exchange or flip flopped, right? And it's like little stuff like that where I go, man, it's tough for things like that to make it through our QA process now. And I wanted to design a company where people could like read a newsletter or read information and fully trust that information was legit. And not only that, if we get it wrong, because we are humans, right? There's humans make mistakes. Owning our mistakes whenever we make our mistakes is a major, major, major deal for us. But to date, right now, we've written close to 8,000 stories. We've run 17 corrections, which from an accuracy perspective, we're 99.8% accurate. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something to be proud of. And, for anyone listening, I'll go on the record and say that I read the donut every day when I get it every morning. That's the first thing I do when I wake up. And for me, just as someone that I just turned 25, I'll be honest, in my late teens and stuff, I wasn't that big on news. I love sports. So I'd check out the sports and maybe like business, but wasn't a big news person. And a big reason behind that was because I didn't feel that I knew enough about topics to really have a stance. And anything I found online, like PJ kind of said, would be very heavy one way or the other. And I felt like I would just be following, like being a follower and not having my own thoughts. So that's something that I've really appreciated about my experience with the donut, that I can read just what's going on from this purely factual standpoint, and then I can create my own thoughts and opinions based on that information.
I love that, man, because it's not like, who the hell am I to tell you what to think?
Right.
Like, who the hell am I?
Yeah.
I never understood that arrogance.
Right. I agree. And I think, with anything in life, I think that, you know, people that share information or, mentor, coach, whatever, teachers, they're just there to provide you the information. Then it's up to you as an individual to do what you want with it, or to make your own decisions. And, I think that there's just kind of, unfortunately, there can be that like herd mentality at times where it's just, something gets tweeted out and then everyone's like, oh yeah, yeah, like I agree, that's right. And that's like, well, do you actually, or are you just kind of like going along with whoever said it, or because that's the popular opinion or whatever? So I love the kind of empowerment that the donut provides, where it's empowering the reader to draw their own conclusions. And, it is important to note that there are, you do include, articles, additional like supplemental readings that might be like one way or the other way, just, to give maybe other perspectives, but the bulk of it is always that unbiased fact.
Oh yeah, and it's also an attempt to bridge kind of the gap, the divide
Hmm.
that exists right now. Because a lot
Yeah.
of what I see, man, and I see it every single day, because I get every single subscriber response from our email, and again, we send it out to a lot of people. All of those responses come directly to me, and a lot of the responses I see, and I'll hop on the phone and talk with a lot of these subscribers. I hear them speaking to caricatures of what the other side actually believes. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that is uh, falling in line with the rhetoric and the talking points. And it tells me, because I've had exposure to people of all different backgrounds, from like literally people who live in India because we lived in India, to people who lived in Hong Kong because we lived in Hong Kong, to West Coast, East Coast, all of that. I've had exposure to a lot of different people. And what I can tell you is there's no conversations, difficult conversations being had on a large scale right now in a productive manner. It's more like, oh, Zach, you're a liberal, you're a snowflake idiot. It's like, ah, Peter, you're a conservative, you're a racist prick, right? It's like, or a racist
Yeah.
homophobe, or, like whatever it is. There's no actual discussion being had. And going back to what you were talking about too, just not feeling like you had enough information to make up your mind on stuff. Well, in today's day and age where like you tweet something and you spell a word wrong and like your entire life is ruined, like that's terrifying, man. I feel like that can just paralyze people. It used to paralyze me, and that's not a world that I want to live in, right? I want to boil that temperature down, and I want to give people exposure to different walks of life and different backgrounds, because that's what research and study shows goes a long way towards acceptance, as when people actually have exposure in their personal lives to these nameless, faceless folks or entities that are meant to be the enemy in media. When they actually get exposure to those individuals or entities on a personal level, a lot of the time the opinion completely changes. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of what I'm trying to do, because I want to live in a world where people of all different backgrounds can contribute to a productive society, but that's not going to happen if there is this belief that you can cram down whatever I believe on
Hmm.
everybody else. What I'm trying to communicate is we need to respect our differences, we need to celebrate our differences, and we need to learn to live together with our differences. And part of that is not giving a shit if it doesn't impact you about what somebody else does.
I love that. Wow, that's just, it's amazing to hear. And, I don't know if it's maybe because in the recent years I've gotten more involved with the news, or just kind of seeing what's going on in the world, or I'm just getting older, or whatever the case may be. But I think, it's safe to say that the last few years, and currently, we kind of live in a divisive world, right? That's just very kind of polar opposites of how the media is presenting things. And um, it's one of those things where I'm a big believer like you, where it's completely okay and expected to have differences of opinions and stuff, but we just need to have those discussions. We need to have those conversations, those productive ones, and respect other people's views and values. And, go into a conversation open-minded where, maybe after talking to you, I'm not going to agree with you, but I agree that you have some good points, but I still have my opinion, right? So just, I love that you're bringing that conversation about and that that's a priority for you in the donut.
And here's another thing, man. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. In
Yeah,
today's
that's
day
true.
and age, like you literally are, like you have to have an opinion on stuff, and that's another thing that makes me uncomfortable because it's like, how am I supposed to have an opinion on something I know nothing about? That's just an uninformed opinion.
Right.
So I would much rather talk to somebody who has one opinion. I would much rather talk to somebody who has a difference of opinion. I would much rather talk to multiple people who have a lot of nuanced, different opinions, and then I will make up my mind on something. But I just don't understand like the hot takes, like the immediate knee jerk reactions that are emotionally uninformed, just pieces of information. And this happens from everybody everywhere. And
Yeah.
it's very frustrating to me to see a lot of individuals who put things online, and I'm not talking about like a lot of the mainstream folks. These are these globbers, the hangers on, who exist solely to whip people into a frenzy so they can sell them merchandise or make money off of individuals. I think that's skeezy. I think that's sleazy. I think I'm not a major fan of that, but I
Right.
see a lot of it in today's day and age. And one of the things that I want to start working towards, but as I'm learning, starting a company from the ground up, things are brick by brick.
Yeah.
Eventually, what I want to do is I want to have a show where people will send in things that they see on social media, be it videos, be it posts from various accounts. And again, from the left all the way to the right. And what we would do on this show is actually dive into these posts and be like, okay, so here is what, and just go through like the donut research, fact tech, QA, and creation process, just to give people a little bit more transparency into what we do, and also help teach like digital literacy. So, like, you see a social media video online, what's the very first thing you do to make sure that it's not bullshit? It's like you check the source, and then after that, you look for context clues, right? And then just kind of take people progressing down this path, because a lot of what I see, and I totally get it, man. Like, everybody's busy. There's so much shit just vying for your attention. In today's day and age, it's tough to act. Well, it's not tough, but a lot of folks don't actually take the 30 seconds to do a Google search of a video, but instead end up disseminating that information in a conversation 2 weeks down the line with information that was incorrect to begin with, right? It's like have you ever played telephone, that game?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the telephone game, and
Right.
the media works the exact same way.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I think that that's great that you brought that up because I was going to say, in terms of, with social media evolving, from when we were young to now,
Yeah.
there's so many ways. Like you can pull up Facebook, you can pull up Instagram, Twitter, whatever, and scroll for like 30 seconds. You're going to see probably multiple things that are, quote unquote news. And whether you're maybe younger and more impressionable, maybe you're older and not super tech savvy, or maybe you're our age, you might just see that and take that as 100% fact. Like that's where I get my news. So it's important, I think, to have that kind of mindset of, let me maybe take the 30 seconds to look into this or fact check it because, there's so many different sources where you're going to find things that just aren't exactly what they seem they might be, or factual at any point.
Dude, the funniest part about that is the same folks who, I don't know if your parents did this, but my parents, when I was growing up and the internet was just coming around, I would talk about something I saw on the internet. They're like, "Oh, you saw it on the internet. It must be true," right? Like in a
Yeah.
sarcastic manner. But
Yeah.
now a lot of what I see are those same exact folks who were warning us that, you can't believe everything you read on the internet, are now blindly believing everything that they read on the internet. So
Right.
I find that kind of funny. But what I see that makes me very hopeful and excited about the future, which is another calling card of the donut, is the younger generation understands this shit, man. Like, we get this, like we understand that not everything you see online is true. We
Yeah.
understand that there's certain things to look for online that somebody who's not as experienced or hasn't grown up with the internet or social media might not think to do. And that's a lot of what excites me about the future. But also at the same time, I look at deep fakes and things like that, and I'm going,
Yeah.
"Oh my god!" Like that Tom. Have you seen that Tom Cruise deep fake TikTok account?
No, I don't think
Oh
so.
my god, man! I'll send you a video after this. But the dude looks identical to Tom Cruise. Like it looks exactly like Tom Cruise.
Oh man. Okay.
Exactly like Tom Cruise, and he has him like saying stuff. The first video I ever saw was him hitting a golf ball, and Tom Cruise like mannerisms, like risky business.
Yeah.
Literally dressed the same way. He goes to the golf tee and he's like sports, right? So um, that's kind of what the next evolution of I think online disinformation kind of scares me, but.
Yeah.
As long as people understand that it's a possibility, you know what I mean? Like I don't watch a flat earth video and be like, oh my gosh, the earth is flat.
Right.
So there's the ability in my mind to provide critical thinking skills, or to have enough critical thinking skills to be able to handle yourself in pretty dicey online situations when it comes to information gathering. So who knows?
Definitely. Definitely. So, like whether it's, far right, far left, whatever, when it comes to televised news or just like going to their website, for maybe one of those, news outlets and looking up some articles or whatever, do you think, or maybe does the donut think that there's any value in doing that? Or is that always going to be just very too over the top on one side, and that's not really a reliable place to look for information?
I mean, there's good value, and there's good value in doing that, but it's important to recognize what you're putting, like you mentioned in the beginning, it's important to recognize what you're putting in your mind, right?
Mhm.
So if you watch a half hour of CNN, I'd counterbalance that with a half hour of Fox News, right? So just stuff like that. Because there is value to getting information and hearing different perspectives. And that's a lot of
Mhm.
what I would suggest, and I invite and implore folks who maybe aren't doing that right now to do. Like if your weekly or your daily news diet is like you watch Don Lemon on CNN, well, maybe flip to somebody else on Fox News for a little bit, right? Just to flip it up a little bit, because the economic incentives again are designed to get you angry, to rally you up, to get you mad, and like my whole message is don't let them win, right? Don't
Yeah.
let them win, because they don't give a shit about you. They don't care about us at all, man. They don't care. They don't care about a lot of where the direction of the country is going. Like that's up to us as people, as citizens, young folks, the next generation, to like stand up and be like, man, we're not going to take that shit. Like we understand what you're doing, and we're not going to let you win.
Yeah. I mean, that's so true, and I definitely think, maybe this is like the millennial mindset that we have, but just like our generation and the younger generation, I feel like there's just more of that push towards news literacy and just making a difference in the world and using platforms and just kind of having the conversations. I mean, even something that I talk about a lot on the podcast is just like how when we were growing up, maybe mental health was more of a stigmatized topic, but
Yep.
now, people are having those conversations. And it's like, it just gives me hope that, not to say anything bad about older generations or anything, but the newer age people coming up, they're more willing to like almost get comfortable being uncomfortable and having topical discussions that aren't traditional or aren't easy.
It goes back to what I was saying before, man. If you look holistically at the world, we are marching in the right direction. And
Yeah.
these major, like this shit all takes time. Like it just takes time. And
Hmm.
patience is definitely necessary. It's required. Things at large scales just don't happen overnight. And that's another thing too that I want to keep poking folks at, and just remind people that it's like a lot of the change that we desire, we all desire, we're getting there, like we are, and maybe not as fast as some people like, not as fast as I'd like in some areas, but we're marching in the right direction. And to me, that's something to be proud of collectively as a society. And also it's something that, like as you mentioned, like it gives me hope for people in the future, again, as long as we understand that difference of opinion is okay, and you don't need to believe what I believe, and you don't need to live the way that I think you should live, as long as you don't hurt me or impact the people around me in a negative manner. Do whatever the hell you want to. And as long as we move towards that direction, man, I feel very hopeful about society, and I have great trust in humanity. Like I really do, to solve world's problems, to innovate our way out of the problems that we've gotten ourselves into. And maybe it's naive, maybe it's stupid, but I will also say we're flying helicopters on the moon, or I'm sorry, on Mars. So maybe we're doing something kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that we have a bright future ahead and, just we're moving in the right direction and it's something that we need to continue to do. And yeah, I mean, again, like we've talked about, just having that open mind and respecting others' opinions and thoughts and, having those conversations. And I think that something that I really respect about you, PJ, is that, you're talking about how you do something that involves news, but you're so open to, Zach, whatever you think, like that's fine. I'm not going to fight you on it. I'm not going to argue. I'm going to listen. And not many people have that mindset all the time. Is there anything that has helped you get to that point in your life, or is that always like a perspective that you've carried?
Well, kind of a combination of the two. And so growing up, we lived in Hong Kong, India. I've lived in Massachusetts, California, Michigan, North Carolina. Now I'm in Texas. So my kind of personal experience spans a pretty wide variety of backgrounds and cultures. And also, I moved around a lot when I was younger, and social media didn't exist. So the only way to keep in contact with people was writing letters. And I honestly saw no point in that because I felt like I had no control over traveling. So I just had to be able to open up really quickly to people. And what I always I always approach conversations in this manner. It's every single person has something that I can learn from, or they do something that I can learn from. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm really, really, really excited to learn more about that particular individual, about their likes, about their dislikes. I want to form a deeper connection. Fuck the superficial shit. I want to form a deeper connection with you. And I also want to learn something from you because you can make me better. And I want to become better as a human being because if I'm better as a human being, as you mentioned, you're the sum of like the 5 people you spend your time with. I can elevate other people around me, and in turn I expect them to challenge me and elevate themselves, right? And this kind of like never ending kind of like rise as we kind of progress through life together. So to answer your question, it's a combination of that and also the work that we've been doing over the past 2 years, because I've realized, have you ever heard the saying, there's lies, damn lies in statistics?
Yeah.
That's the God honest truth, man. And we see it every time where news orgs and just people will selectively pull statistics. And I've gotten to the point now where I look at situations and I go, we can objectively say what happened here, but there are a lot of interpretations about how we got to this point. There's not just one reason most of the time. There's a lot of different reasons. So a lot of people can have kernels of truth in their beliefs and kind of their opinions and a lot of what they're saying. So I want to listen to everybody because I know there's a kernel of truth in something that everybody is saying. And it's kind of like a challenge, like a jigsaw puzzle for me. If I can pull out or extract the things that go together, I can like put the pieces together in a way that makes sense to me, where I actually know and have a holistic view of the situation. And again, going back to not having an opinion on things until I've like had the time to actually delve into them. That's a lot of where that comes from, I think. So again, combination of background and just the work that we've been doing.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. And it's so funny because in this conversation already, you've hit on so many things that are themes or things that I bring up in these conversations. And, the one that came to mind with what you're just saying is I always say that every opportunity, every situation, every person that we come in contact with is an opportunity to learn. We just have to be open to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a huge key in what you're saying and what I believe is just that openness, have a conversation because like you're saying, there's in everything there's going to be something that you can take away from it or some kernel of truth and, you know, just be open to hearing what other people have to say because you might be surprised, honestly. Like if you go in with that mindset of like, oh, I'm not going to believe what they say or like they have a different opinion, so like I'm not going to even like listen to a single word they say. Like you're just hurting yourself with that.
And it applies to everybody. I see it a lot of times in peers and just folks around me and like Ubers and Lyfts, for instance. I talk about this all the time. I love talking to Uber and Lyft drivers. I fucking love it. It's like one of my favorite pastimes. I see so many folks who will call an Uber a Lyft and like treat it like a limousine, right? Like you get in the back and then like, oh, don't talk to me, driver. I'm really busy. It's like, who the fuck are you? You're not that busy. But I always talk to the Uber and Lyft drivers, and man, I've made so many friends and like forged so many deep connections. And like, I can give you a story of one of them. Actually, this is my favorite one. This guy's, this was, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, 2 or so years ago, right after the assassination of General Soleimani, the Iranian commander in chief of the armed forces. And I get in this, I call a Lyft. I'm downtown Austin. I call a Lyft and I get in and I just start talking to the driver. And he's got a little bit of an accent. So I always love like learning people's stories and, kind of like where they come from and a lot of that. So I started asking him. And I don't know what it was, but this dude just started opening up. And it turns out that he was an Iraqi national. And not only was he an Iraqi national, but he had fought for Saddam Hussein in the early 2000s. Like he was literally in the army. So he was telling me about his experience in the Iraqi forces under Saddam Hussein and how miserable it was and how he grew to be completely disaffected with the regime and ended up becoming an informant for the US armed forces. But when he became an informant for the US armed forces, they put a target on the guy's back. And what ended up happening was a terrorist cell captured his brother, slowly tortured him, and killed him. And right after that, like literally cover of night type shit, the US extradited him. Well, extradited might not be the right word, but got him from Iraq to Austin along with his wife, his 2-year-old child, and his wife was also pregnant with another child at the time. That was 10 years before I met him. And he was in Austin like the day after his brother was brutally murdered. But the interesting part to me about our conversation was his perspective on Iraq and the US occupation of Iraq and whether he thought it was a good thing or a bad thing or a lot of that. But point I'm trying to make here is I would have never learned the things that I did about Iran and Iraq and about how the culture actually works and about how the populace actually thinks if I didn't treat this Lyft driver as somebody who is worthy of a conversation with me. And I see so many people who do it to like waiters, waitresses, service workers, things like that. Like these people have so unique backgrounds and many of them have these incredible freaking stories and they're wonderful human beings. And I just love being able to forge those types of connections, those random connections where it's something like I don't know why I met you, but I'm really glad I did kind of thing.
Yeah. Wow, that story and experience is crazy to hear about. And I mean, that goes to show like how many people got into that guy's car for rides and didn't say a single thing. And you have this conversation where you learn so much, and it probably was really impactful for him as well to be able to share that and for someone to actually listen to him and allow him to be heard. So, I think that that's incredible. And I'm the same way. Like if I go somewhere, I want to have conversations with people. I don't care if like I'm that one person in an elevator that just starts having a conversation with whoever else is in there. Like that's what life's about. Like we all want to connect with people and hear each other's stories when we can. So, I mean, I definitely think if anyone listening, isn't in that perspective, like just try it. Just next time you go out to eat, next time you go to the store, just strike up a conversation with, someone working there and you'd be surprised with what you could learn.
Yeah, Caesar Freeman was the guy. And he changed his last name. Actually, that's the coolest part of the story. So
Yeah.
he changed his last name when he came to the U.S. from I can't remember what it was, but he changed it to Free Man because he said, "I'm now a free man."
Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. And there's another story too of a woman who, again, this is a Lyft driver, a woman who I found out grew up in Honduras, had a baby when she was 13 years old, had no way to support the baby. Parents kicked her out the house, so she turned to prostitution on the streets of Honduras to survive and put food on the table for her and her baby. And somehow, man, freaking somehow, she ended up scraping enough money together, ended up making the journey from Honduras, getting into the United States. And when I was talking to her, man, she's, I don't know, maybe like mid 50s. This woman was glowing, like glowing. And I'm going, ma'am, how in the world did you get from where you grew up, like this, the stories that you're telling me about what you were forced to do to survive? How the hell did you get from that to being so freaking happy today? How? And her mindset is incredible, man. It's like she's so grateful for everything that happens. She looks on the bright side of everything, like finds the good in every single scenario, and never takes time to feel sorry for herself. And that's coming from her. And what she ended up doing is just continuously picking herself back up and moving forward, and picking herself back up and moving forward, like just keep like going through all those hard times, man, and just pushing through it. And she's got a beautiful family, a beautiful home. Like, she drove me by it. We went out of our way. She drove me by it, and she's like, look, this is the home that I purchased. Like, this is where I live with my family. Like, and those types of stories, man. And again, like, I still remember that to this day. This still, like, this makes me emotional, like, to this day. And it hurts me, you know, that I well, number one, we haven't had the ability to have those conversations for like the past year. And, you know, number two, people who don't know her story and like get into the car and don't have the ability or the opportunity to hear her story or like talk to her or learn the stuff that I did from her. Because, man, it's incredible. And how somebody can have such a positive, like, strong mindset after going through all that shit, just amazes me.
That is incredible, and wow, yeah. I mean, like I feel like I can hear the emotion when you recall, these kind of stories, and I feel emotion like welling up in me, just like that is incredible. And I'm not here to call anyone out, and I even do it myself. But like, we have those days where we're like, oh, I went to the grocery store, they didn't have my favorite cereal, like my life sucks, like today's a terrible day, whatever. And it's like just that perspective of like people in this world go through crazy stuff, and they still have the most positive energy and mindset and attitude and outlook. And it's like we can definitely learn from people that go through those experiences. And I mean, I just feel grateful that you were here to share, these stories with me, because they've definitely had an impact on me just from hearing them secondhand.
No, I appreciate that, man. And dude, I do
Yeah.
it in my daily life all the time too. Don't get me wrong. Like,
Yeah.
I just go to the grocery, like you mentioned, go to the grocery store. Be like, God,
Yeah.
freaking idiot took my parking spots.
Right.
Really, and like in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? Or somebody, does something stupid when driving, or like doesn't merge at the right time. It's like, oh,
Right.
you asshole! Like, I hate my life. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you don't. Or there's a,
Right.
a Louis C.K. bit. Regardless of what you think about him, he has a funny bit about how nowadays people don't realize like how amazing the technology we use is,
Mm-hmm.
and it effectively ends with him. I'm going to ruin it for all y'all, sorry, but it effectively ends with him making an example of somebody who like looks at their phone and it takes like a few seconds to load a web page. It's like, oh, fucking stupid phones, like so old. It's like, really? Is it stupid? Because like, excuse it, because it has to go to freaking space, talk to something else, and then come back from space to serve your stupid little butt with your fat fingers and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
that kind of just it that allows, that bit just reminds me at least to put things in perspective, because it's like, man, in the grand scheme of things, a web page taking 10 seconds to load, or when you're on a Zoom call and the computer's going slow, it's like,
Right.
these are luxury problems, man. These are
Yeah.
luxury problems. We're not worrying about whether a woolly mammoth or a saber-toothed tiger is going to bite our fucking faces off. We're worrying about whether a web page is going to load or not. So,
Right.
perspective.
Definitely, it's all about perspective, and very, very much luxury problems, champagne problems, whatever you want to call them. But PJ, it's been awesome talking to you. Like we've said, you can learn from any conversation, and I know that I've learned a lot from this conversation with you. And I appreciate being able to call you a friend, and be along in this journey for the last whatever 10, 15 years, and to see where you're at now. It's been awesome.
And vice versa, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
This was awesome. And
Yeah, of course.
if you want to check out the donut, find us at thedonut.co. That's THEDONUT.co. Stands for Dose of News Useful Today. That's a little Easter egg there. But sign up for our newsletter. Comes in at like around 6 a.m. or so every single morning. We'll have a couple additional newsletters launching. So if you're all about positive news, we'll have a newsletter that's 1000% only the good stuff happening in the world. Wake up, choose good vibes. And then we're launching a futuristic newsletter all about emerging technology, medical breakthroughs, like the cutting edge of modern day science. So if you want to get hope for the future, you want to get excited about the future, that's the newsletter for you. And then last thing, we're launching a text message as well. It's the first ever text message that delivers comprehensive news. It's called Donut DM. That'll be coming out over the next couple weeks. So point I'm making, sign up for our newsletter at thedonut.co and be on the lookout because we got some cool shit coming.
Man, you beat me to it. I was gonna say, is there anything that you want to leave the listeners or anywhere to check out the donut? But
This ain't my first rodeo, my friend. This ain't my first rodeo.
that's fair. But everything that you said to with the website and all that, I'll put that in the description. So anyone listening, if you didn't catch that, just head on to the description of the episode and check out the donut. I swear by it. I mean, it's changed my life. I'm big on like morning rituals, and after I wake up and do some gratitude and stuff like that, first thing I do is pop open the donut and see what's going on and get that positivity. So definitely check it out. But other than that, PJ, any last words, any last message you want to give to anyone listening?
I mean, thanks for listening, I guess, number one. And I actually had a question. So you said you're big on morning routines. Have you seen or heard of a company called the Daily Aloha?
No, I haven't.
Let me send that to you. And I might also be able to make an intro to you with the founder as well. Her name's Amy Giddens. She's freaking amazing. Her mission is to pretty much deliver like positive social media or introduce actual real human connection via social media. And it's a mindfulness app. Daily Aloha is. So you should check it out.
That is awesome. I will definitely check it out. Thank you for sharing that.
You got it, man.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. Thanks for everything you shared. We'll definitely have to have you back for another conversation. But I appreciate your time and have a good one, man.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having me. We'll talk to you.
Yeah, of course. Talk to you later.
Yeah.